Hello and welcome to PubShorts episode 88. Cut You Up is the name of the episode, and my name is Dr. KK, and I have the smiling Tony O'Rourke.
Well, life's too short to be unhappy. Hi, KK. How are you? I'm Tony O'Rourke. I'm Vice President for Partnerships here at Inago, and welcome to another episode 88 of PubShorts. Good Lord, how we got this far is incredible. We'll have 100 episodes soon, and we'll need to celebrate that in a big way.
Yeah.
So what is PubShorts? PubShorts is a regular episodic podcast that KK and I record as often as we can, often 2-3 times a week, where we talk about articles that impact the world of scholarly publishing. Whether it's technology, policy, matters relating to research itself. And what we try and do is select articles under a particular theme. And this episode's theme is around quite an obscure song. I think I've mentioned this before in episodes. KK and I are both mildly music obsessed, maybe not so mildly. And we like to give each episode a name name each episode after a particular British pop or rock song. So this particular episode is called "Cuts You Up" now, which borrows a title from a song called "Cuts You Up" by Peter Murphy from 1989. Peter Murphy was the lead singer of a group called Bauhaus back in the early 1880s, and this episode examines how budget and subscription cuts have cut up US science, from halting NIH funding, from huge cancellations from big US ministries and departments, Springer Nature cancellations, to the rise of academic refugees. The pain of sudden loss, which is described in Peter Murphy's song, the analogy is that we explore the human and institutional toll of policies that threaten the very fabric of scholarly publishing. God, that was heavy.
I have tears in my eyes, and Tony, I have not taken acting lessons. This is pure.
And that's not through boredom.
And it's purely poetic writing. I don't know how you come up with all these wonderful introductions.
I don't know how I do it either, KK. Well done, me.
Excellent. So, are you ready for the first story, which is about research integrity from the land that we refer to as the US of A? So, the first story is from science.org, and unfortunately, I have to opt to the reader view because I only have 3 articles, and each article is dominated by a pop-up from science.org saying that I have only free articles left for this month. So, this is titled "Sluggishness and Defensiveness Helped Enable an Executive Order on Research Integrity." So, we are talking about the restoring gold standard science executive order, and it is from the Trump administration. If you have not been keeping up, it aims to strengthen research integrity with more government oversight. So this is what the order is about. But many in the scientific community are concerned, and they fear political appointees will interfere with scientific processes. The article also mentions a replication crisis in science, which we have talked about, Tony, in previous episodes, especially in psychology, leading to doubts about research reliability. The sluggish response of journals and institutions to research integrity issues has fueled criticism, and this piece in science.org suggests that scientists should engage in dialogue about integrity issues instead of being defensive. I think we have explored similar articles before, and eventually the article calls for the scientific community to uphold its values and hold members accountable for integrity issues as a response, and maybe instead of the executive order that the Trump administration has put out. So your thoughts on this?
So self-governed rather than having it imposed on them.
Yeah,
absolutely right. And I think what this highlights again, and this is something this is not a new topic, is the need for standards in academic research, in academic teaching, sort of global standards that everyone signs up to. If you want to work in academic research, these are the rules. This is what you need to do. This is how you need to behave. And if you go outside of these rules, then there have to be penalties. There have to be there have to be penalties. And I think this is just although I don't agree with many of Trump's policies personally. It's just a personal view.
Mm-hmm.
I do think in this particular instance there is a need to maybe raise the bar in terms of standards, but I don't think it's a bar that needs to be managed and governed and supervised by the government. The community itself should be managing that.
Right. And we are on to a series of articles about the cuts that we mentioned in the introduction. So the first one is again from science.org. It's titled "Trump Cuts Subscriptions to Springer Nature Journals." So the decision affects access to agency scientists, including those from NIH. Administration officials have criticized academic journals for alleged bias, and conflicting reports exist about whether NIH contracts were terminated or not. Now, Springer Nature is a major scientific publisher with over 3,000 journals, and previous similar moves by the administration have been made to cut costs. And the critiques from officials suggest that journals are partisan in scientific debates. Basically, it's a political move, and it's not really related to as much funding is the main theme of the article. So this is obviously worrisome, and I'm sure that you agree with me. Subscription cancellations and funding cuts, Tony, to people who criticize the administration for being broadly anti-science, that is not the right way to do science in any country. I mean, at least not in the biggest democracy in the world, at least second biggest democracy in the world.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I mean, we have spoken about this before. I think
Yeah.
there should be academic freedom. There should be freedom to research areas that will add value to to the human condition and to the world in general. And there shouldn't be policies that dictate what those research areas should be. So this isn't going to be the first article. There were articles previously about the Department of Agriculture's cuts, and I'm sure we'll see some more stories as well.
Moving on to a Delta Think article titled "News and Views: How Much Will Cuts to NIH Funding Affect Scholarly Publishing Activity?" So, some background: NIH, National Institute of Health, is the largest funder of biomedical research, producing significant volumes of scholarly papers. And the proposed cuts to NIH fundings could lead to a decrease in research output affecting global scholarly publishing. The extent of the impact depends on whether funding cuts affect large or small grants more, and larger grants tend to lead to more publications, so cuts there could have more significant effects, which is an angle that I hadn't thought of. And estimates suggest a potential drop in US publication output by 15 to 20%. That is a huge drop, considering that China is increasing every year like 10%, 15%.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts, Tony?
You've preempted exactly what I was going to say. It used to be that for years the US was the number one in terms of not just the quantity of research output, but the quality for research output, most cited authors, most cited institutions. And China was catching up very quickly. These policies will see China sort of going even further away at the top of that table. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's bad for that NIH funded research. Because it doesn't just impact US scientists, it impacts all those global collaborations that are taking place, particularly in things like virology and identifying new, a bad thing.
Right. So moving
My
on.
brain's not working.
No, Tony, it's perfectly working, and you should be aware of it. The next news explainer article from Nature. It is titled "NIH funded science must now be free to read instantly. What you should know." This is a new directive. If you're a researcher, if you read that NIH funded research should be freely available, it's great for you. But there are other consequences. So this policy has kicked in from the 1st of July this year. NIH funded research must be free instantly. That means that as soon as it is published, it is also available open access. I mean, free access, I would say. Researchers need to use PubMed Central for accessing this, and there is no embargo period as there used to be. And universities also need to guide researchers, and authors have options with open access journals, obviously, in terms of such things. And closed access journals may face such challenges. So it's something that still needs to be sort of treaded with caution in terms of how it will eventually affect, especially the publishers and the journals. So what are your thoughts? I mean, you are in conversations with publishers and journals on a day in, day out basis. So what are they thinking about the NIH funding related, open as it
I mean, it's not just NIH. I mean, the department, the Office of Science and Technology Policy in the US has long argued for immediate access to content. And then the question is, what is the role of the journal? What is the role of how can the journal have a sustainable business model if content, the valued content, the high value content that it's publishing and investing in terms of peer review systems and ensuring quality of peer review, investing in platforms, investing in technology to keep that content sustainable. If that if people don't need to subscribe anymore to read that content, what's going to happen to those journals? I think we're going to see a lot of society struggling over the next few years, society publishers, and we're going to see a lot of closures of journals as well, which, I think is a sad thing, bearing in mind sort of the growth in scientific output over the last 20 years.
Right. Excellent points. Moving on to another related story. So many stories. So this is from the NIH itself, but this is a story titled "NIH Crackdown on Excessive Publisher Fees for Publicly Funded Research." This is the other side of the equation.
Yeah.
So the publishers apparently charge up to $13,000 per articles for open access. NIH pays millions in subscription fees to these publishers to make these articles made open access and openly available. And this new policy will cap publication costs. And this also aims to make research accessible and restore public trust. And the policy is effective in fiscal year 2026. And a couple of, I think, quotes, information snippets. So the policy that will cap how much publishers can charge NIH-supported scientists to make their research findings publicly accessible. And the whole idea, I think this is an actual quote, creating an open, honest, and transparent research atmosphere is a key part of restoring public trust and public health, from the NIH director, Jay Bhattacharya. So once again, my question to you, how will this affect publishers in terms of the negotiations that they might need to have? Because it's obviously going to affect their bottom line, I suppose.
I think it was James Butcher in Journalology who said that what this will do, if this goes ahead, is that in order for publishers to maintain the revenues that they require in order to run their businesses effectively, what they'll see is potentially, acceptance rates being pushed up, so that the quality of what's being produced is actually ends up being lower than you would expect from that particular journal. I do agree that there is an element of price gouging here. I mean, there $13,000 for an APC is ridiculous, in my opinion. There has to be a fair APC. I don't know, however, whether it's the right of the funder to try and set that, or whether the industry should be coming up with sort of self-regulating mechanisms that can do that themselves. As long the principle should be is how much is required to keep a high impact journal, a high value journal, going, to ensure that the research can be communicated in the same way now as it was 10, 20, 30 years ago. And then, you look at the costs. But I mean, and there were plenty of alternatives to this as well. Publishers don't have to necessarily, the institutions don't necessarily have to do single deals with publishers based on a journal by article deal. They can buy read and publish agreements where there is no cap, and where there's no, the APC isn't charged in the same way, and it gives them control over their spending.
Interesting. So you've got such a decades of experience in publishing, and you probably have met with publishers who might face similar guidelines or from other.
Well, yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I'm just thinking, markets like China and India are changing a lot. If you're a publisher, for example, and you want to be able to make your content more widely available in a market like China, and you're facing some criticism around the APCs that you're charging, then you can work with our expert services, China Expert Services Group at Charlesworth, to try and come up with plans to present and promote and market your journals and your APCs in the most effective way to that market.
Excellent. Thank you for explaining that point. Moving on to the next article. This is from Politico. It's titled "The First American Scientific Refugees Arrive in France." Not for a vacation, I think. So, so this this is obviously related to researchers wanting to go away, as in emigrate from America, the US of A, considering all the executive orders and the anti-science, anti-science leaning agenda by the government. So the first set of such academics are leaving US for France, and I'm going to ask you, Tony, to pronounce the name of the university, if you can find it in the notes that I shared with you.
Aix-Marseille.
Yeah.
I think Aix-Marseille. Aix-Marseille.
Yeah, Aix-Marseille University.
I'm never sure how to pronounce that X at the end of the word. I think it's A or Aix-Marseille.
Yeah.
A Marseille.
Yeah, so this university in France offers a safe place for science program, and the program attracts US researchers facing funding cuts under the Trump administration. 8 US researchers are in the final stages of joining the program, and the initiative is compared to the European academics fleeing Nazi Germany. That's a big comparison to make. And
Yeah.
the university president, along with Francois Holland, advocate for a scientific refugee status, which is an interesting thing. Are things like this happening in the UK, Tony?
Yeah. Not from the UK out, but we are certainly seeing
Yeah,
researchers from the US coming into the UK. Yeah, absolutely, and understandably so. Well, if you're operating, working in research areas which are considered to be anti current US policy, and you want to maintain your research career, then you've got no choice but to leave. I can't remember which episode of PubShorts it was. We talked about this. We actually named that episode "Should I Stay or Should I Go?"
yes.
by the Clash song. You know,
Well,
this
I can
is
look that up. I can look that
yeah.
up. Yeah.
Yeah, this is another a real example of, not, this isn't just a prediction, this is reality now, unfortunately.
Yep. It's episode 52, and I think we did it in November, if I'm not mistaken. Sorry.
Episode 52, that's
no,
right.
no,
Yeah, and they're all on our PubShorts channel on YouTube.
Yeah, I don't know if it did it in November. It could be in March as well. I don't remember. I don't have the dates for all the episodes. But anyway, you can find it on the YouTube playlist that Tony will eventually let you know how you can find it. So moving on to the next one. This is a press release from Elsevier, another sort of shot in the arm for life sciences research, I would say. So Elsevier introduces Embase AI to transform how users draw critical insights from biomedical research. Now, this is obviously uses natural language processing for literature search and summarization. It benefits from its benefits include easier access, faster insights, and improved decision making. And this is designed in partnership with researchers, and it supports various teams like R&D, medical affairs, and educators. And obviously, users can ask questions and they return very nuanced, contextually relevant answers. And it also ensures data privacy. And I guess I just want to say that this is an excellent news from the point of view of a biomedical researcher or an organization doing biomedical research.
Now, this is another really good use of AI. I mean, if you think of the generational use of these abstracting and indexing tools like Embase, 30 years ago, as you were lucky if the resource was available online. You had a print index, you had to look up the references manually from a print index, and then those resources became available online, so you could then cross-search multiple volumes together. And then the content was linked to the full text of articles. So if your institution had had a subscription, or they were using sort of discovery tools to identify whether that material was available in the institution, you had access to the full text for the search that you're finding. And now it's taking it to another level of saying, not only will we give you the full text, we'll also give you an analysis. We'll also tell you what other related material exists. We also tell you, other things that you need to be thinking about when you're considering this particular research. This is for me, I think, an absolutely perfect use of AI.
Excellent. Thank you, Tony. And I think this is an article which was published later, but it should have been with the previous article about the NIH policy. So this is about the NIH policy that requires that all articles published, funded using NIH funding should be published open access on day one of their publication. So what this article talks about is that authors and researchers should know or understand how their work is being shared. So understanding the Creative Commons licenses is important for controlling how work is used, which I think it's one of the more complex things. I mean, I find it difficult to sort of even wrap my head around sometimes using those these indicators of what the type of license, etc. And many scientists are not fully familiar with these licenses, leading to potential misuse concerns. Some researchers worry about AI training using their work without permission, and institutions should support authors in protecting the work's integrity. And legal avenues of misuse are limited, emphasizing the need for institutional support. So sort of a well-rounded article in terms of from a researcher's perspective, how they will get affected by the NIH policy. So your thoughts on this? And in terms of researcher education, we have a brand called Inago Academy, where we help researchers understand how, for example, Creative Commons licensing or general content licensing works. And maybe researchers can use these courses. Do you agree with me, Tony?
Oh, when I first started working for Inago 10 years ago as a consultant, one of the earliest things I was involved in was a program where we would go around to various research conferences, academic conferences, and argue the need for standards in research education. There was no. You're a PhD yourself, KK. So I don't know what what sort of training you went through when you started your degree, your PhD. But a typical PhD student in the UK, there were certain things at some universities. The quality of education in terms of this is what you need to be doing. This is what research integrity is. This is what you need to understand about the rights and licensing of your content. Some universities do it better than others. But you look at it from a global perspective, a lot of that training just doesn't exist. What is research integrity? How can you manage research integrity? How can you ensure research integrity? So, understanding things like the Creative Commons licenses, which have been in existence for nearly 20 years now. I've been in academic publishing a long time, and I don't personally understand every single element of the CC licenses. They're very well thought through and very good, and they've replaced the traditional sort of publisher license models.
Right.
But I think there generally needs to be greater education for researchers in terms of understanding, what are the hurdles that might affect their research careers, and particularly in terms of research communication, like licensing, copywriting. When should I license my content to a publisher? When should I retain those rights myself?
Right. Wow, that's excellent. I mean, I again did not think of the 10-year history where you started off doing this sort of work, but interesting perspective.
Yeah, so we attended a number of particularly research aiming at research managers, asking research managers what it is you do within your institution to ensure that every new PhD candidate, every new doctoral student understands best practice in research, research process and practices, best practice in research communication. What are the issues that they're going to affect? And we were arguing at the time for like some kind of almost like an ISO, kind of a global standard that could be assigned to an institution, but that didn't get very far.
Well, we are moving on to quick hits without asking for permission this time. And the first one is a perspective article. AI-mediated translation presents two possible futures for the academic publishing, I guess, community in a multilingual world. And Tony, I'll present. So AI is here, and there are two ways in which it could help in terms of language assistance, because English is a predominant primary language, right? So AI could either help non-English speakers to translate their work in English, or in the alternative future, AI could allow papers to be published in any language, promoting linguistic diversity. Now, obviously, there are challenges with it, but among the two futures, what is your preferred one?
Well, I don't think these are futures. These are now. Okay. This isn't something that's going to happen in 10 years' time. We're already seeing this.
Right.
I'm talking to publishers at the moment, particularly publishers that work in non-English language regions, about programs and policies that will allow content to be published in parallel in two languages or more.
Right.
So this isn't about the future. This is about something that's already happening today.
But among the two, let's say you can argue that it's happening today. So which one would you like? Using English as the primary language, but using AI to get things to be English in non-English to be converted to English, or publishing in different languages and using AI for the reader to help them interpret it. What do you think is the better future in your opinion?
I think the first model for me is preferable, because English is the lingua franca of research. I know in the 1930s, 1940s, German was the lingua franca in subjects like physics and chemistry,
right?
But it's not anymore. English is the dominant language. Yes, I appreciate that it creates a disadvantage, perhaps, for those authors whose first language isn't English, but it is a global standard. Okay, maybe if the programs could be introduced which would help the author to express that research more effectively, working together with organizations like us when they're preparing their content, to ensure if they're writing something in Japanese, it can be presented in English in the most effective way. I wouldn't object to that, but you still need an element of human oversight, particularly expert human oversight, when finalizing content.
Right. I think there's merit in the second thing as well. I understand why you say the English as a lingua franca is probably the better way, at least as things stand now. But as we mentioned in the previous episode, languages are dying, and encouraging researchers to publish in their own
Oh yeah,
native language
yeah, 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 yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
that's also
Yeah, but authors will still need help. It's not, they cannot rely exclusively
right.
on translation tools, because those translation tools will make mistakes.
Right. All right, moving on to the next article. I have lost my mouse cursor. That is okay. So this is from Springer Nature. It is titled "How We Are Diversifying Our Editorial Boards in China." So
Yeah,
this author, the aim is to ensure editorial boards represent the diverse communities that they serve, and over 3,000 new editorial board members from China have been appointed since 2024. Wonderful work
yeah,
by
yeah.
Springer Nature, and there's a strong focus on recruiting local talents and expanding the local presence. And this is something that I think, if I'm not mistaken, we have already discussed. Is that the percentage of editors.
The imbalance.
The imbalance of the percentage of editors from China as opposed to the
Yeah,
research papers that
yeah,
these
yeah,
editors are screening. So it's
yeah.
a wonderful initiative from Springer Nature. Any other thoughts on this, Tony?
No, kudos to Springer Nature for promoting this. I think it's very important that there's local editorial board that represents the scale of publishing within their own local communities. And then what we'll find is that there'll be fewer US, UK board members. But if 90% of a journal's content or 50% of a journal's content is coming from China, then so should the editorial board reflect that kind of that proportion.
All right, the last quick hit. It's a name that I may not pronounce. Coalition X S Executive Director Johan Rurik to leave Coalition S in July 2025. I want to ask your thoughts on this. So Rurik focused on open access and diamond open access initiatives and contributed to EU-funded projects and established the European Diamond Capacity Hub. And so he is leaving now. So is there any threat to the mission of Coalition S in this context, Tony?
I don't think so. No, this is the Coalition S is an EU initiative, a European Commission initiative. I can't see this just because the executive director is stepping down. There'll be somebody else. They'll step up to replace him.
Excellent. And that brings us to the end of episode 88. Cuts you up. I hope this episode has not cut you up with too much information regarding cuts from the US government. But Tony will definitely tell you something that might cut you up if you actually intend to follow what he says. So, Tony, where can people watch all the 87 episodes, including this one?
I'm trying to work out how that's going to cut somebody up, but I will make my every effort. So yes, please go to the PubShorts channel on YouTube. If you search for Inago PubShorts, you'll see all previous 87 episodes, and we encourage you to like and to share those videos with your colleagues, and give us in the comments channel, leave suggestions for future topics for future episodes of PubShorts as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Tony.
And if you want to contact me, you can contact me directly at tonyo@inago.com. And you can contact KK and me directly via LinkedIn.
Yeah, we'll be very happy and grateful for your thoughts on suggestions, as well as any critique that you might have. We would try to incorporate every suggestion that you have. And Tony, do you have any musical engagements lined up for the weekend?
I do, not for the weekend, but next week I'm attending a acoustic guitar boot camp. Where I shall be attempting to improve my guitar playing skills. So I'll be sitting in a forest for 3 days doing yoga and playing the guitar. So that's going to be great fun.
Excellent. Are you going to journal your entire forest experience on social media, on TikTok maybe?
No, I don't want anyone to know where I am.
All right. On that strictly privacy-related note, this is Dr. KK signing off on behalf of Tony, as well as the team that supports us. Right. Bring you such content. We will see you in the next one. Happy guitar learning, Tony. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. See you next.